welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and are you playing a discard theme in the Commander format? Lots of different variations of in the format, I am sure, and if you are doing so, I have some suggestions for you. One of the big advantages to playing a discard theme, of course, is that you can chuck things away that you don't really want. You're filtering through your deck to get to the stuff you want and throwing away stuff that isn't very good in that moment. But for that reason, you can put a lot of stuff that can, in specific situations, be phenomenal where otherwise it might not be good. In particular, cards that hate on certain colors, right? We don't really see those much in the Commander format because, of course, you never know what colors you're going to be playing against. So cards like Omen of Fire or Wrath of Merit Lage would be phenomenal in the situations where you're playing against those certain colors. But if no one's playing those colors, they're not very good, right? But of course, in a discard theme, it's very easy to just chuck them away because no one happens to be playing those colors right now, right? Compost and Insight, fantastic card draw options if you happen to be playing against those colors, right? If someone's playing black, Compost is one of the best card draw options in the entire format. And if someone's playing green, Insight is one of the best card draw options out there because whenever one of your opponents casts a green spell, you draw a card, of course, is pretty fantastic card draw. But if no one happens to be playing them, well, that's okay. We'll just chuck them away. We don't need them anymore, right? So those color-specific cards can be really, really fantastic if you're playing against certain colors. But if not, in a discard theme, we'll just chuck them in the bin. There's really situational cards that can be super fantastic as well in given situations that if I'm not in that situation, it's okay. I'll just discard it. Illness in the Ranks is one that I just recommended a patron put in one of their decks, and boy, did that come back to bite me in the ass. 1 black mana enchantment. Creature tokens get -1/-1. So of course, if you're playing against a creature token heavy deck, it's phenomenal. I mean, this card really did shut me down for a lot of the game. But if you're not, then of course it becomes pretty useless. Against a Krenko deck or against like a Sapling Tribal deck, this can be absolutely fantastic. It might even shut down your opponents entirely. But if not, that's okay. We'll just discard it. Leyline of Singularity and Eye of Singularity are two very unique cards in the Commander format that essentially make things into legendary permanents. Two cards that, again, can be absolute slam dunks against certain strategies. In particular, again, those token strategies, not just creature tokens, though. Any tokens, these cards work fantastically against. I find it highly unlikely, in fact, that either of these cards would be completely useless in a Commander game, but if they were, you could easily just chuck them away. Of course, there's also the things that just want to be in graveyards, right? The really obvious stuff like Vengeful Pharaoh and Anger. Those are two cards that on the battlefield, they're okay, but of course, they prefer to be in the graveyard, right? There's lots of cards that have a function that is better when they're in the graveyard than when they're in play. So those cards, of course, you want to be including in a discard theme. Cards like Glory and Daring Fiendbonder actually have activated abilities that can only be used when they're in the graveyard. So of course, might want to include those in your discard theme because of course, very easy to chuck them in the bin. And you absolutely need to be including a Squee Goblin Nabob if you are in a discard theme. Of course, in red, 2 in a red, legendary creature goblin 1/1. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return Squee Goblin Nabob from your graveyard to your hand. So it's not completely intuitive that you would include this in a discard theme, right? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's for a discard theme, but of course, obviously, it is just free discard fodder. That's why it is such a fantastic fit there. If you're in a discard theme in red, you just discard this to whatever you're normally discarding stuff to, and then on your upkeep, return it to your hand so that you can do it again. It's just a 1/1 creature. You will likely never actually cast this. It is just a card that you can freely discard every single turn and then continually get it back. Another card that I think is great in the discard theme, and again, not completely intuitive, is Crucible of Worlds. That's right, 3 mana artifact. You may play lands from your graveyard. Doesn't seem like you would want to put this in a discard theme, but I actually think it's a fantastic fit. Recently added this to my own discard deck, my Bralin deck, because I thought it was just fantastic value. Of course, when you're discarding things, you're putting them into your graveyard, and then obviously if they're lands, you can then play them from your graveyard. First of all, I have those cycling lands. Of course, again, that's something else you might want to think to add to your discard theme, are these cycling lands, because of course cycling is a discard. So I can cycle away my land, get a discard trigger, and then I can play that land from my graveyard with my Crucible of Worlds, right? But if I have something that I want to be discarding, say I got a Faithless Looting in my deck, I will draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards. I don't really want to discard my land because of course I want to make a land drop. But if I have a Crucible of Worlds in play, I can now easily just discard my basic mountain to my Faithless Looting effect and then just play it from my graveyard with my Crucible of Worlds, right? So Crucible of Worlds actually, I think, is a pretty fantastic fit in any discard theme because it allows you to use your lands as discard fodder and then just easily play them from your graveyard after the fact. Even more so, again, another card that doesn't seem that intuitive in a discard theme is Drownyard Temple. Got this idea from a patron again. I will give him a shout out. He just happened to be playing, again, a mono red deck where, a mono red happens to have a lot of those cathartic reunion, thrill of possibility type of effects. And he thought, heck, I'll just throw a Drownyard Temple in there because, again, I can easily discard my Drownyard Temple to one of those effects and then return it from my graveyard later on in the game. So again, another thing that doesn't seem so obvious in a discard theme that actually can be good value. I'll just discard my Drownyard Temple to my Thrill of Possibility early in the game, and then later I can pay 3 to put it directly into play. And even less intuitive, and a card again that I just added to my Browlin deck is Ghost Town, and I actually think this is a really funny fit in a discard theme. It's just a land that adds colorless mana, but you can pay 0 to return it to owner's hand, activate if it's not your turn. So you can't do it on your turn, fine, whatever, doesn't really matter. But I took that Drownyard Temple idea and I thought, oh, wait a minute, Ghost Town kind of works similarly, but kind of in reverse, where with Drownyard Temple, I'm going to discard it and then return it to play later on in the game. But with Ghost Town, I'm going to play it, use it as a land like I normally would, and then later in the game, when I now need cards in hand that I can be discarding to these effects, again, a card like Thrill of Possibility is actually not a great card draw option in a lot of situations. If I'm empty-handed and I draw that Thrill of Possibility off the top of my library, I can't cast it because I have nothing to discard to it. Discarding something is part of the requirement for casting that spell, so I can just wait till my opponent's turn, obviously, activate my Ghost Town, return it to my hand, and then use the Ghost Town as the discard fodder for my Thrill of Possibility or whatever else I want to be discarding. Obviously, if I'm in a discard theme, I probably have lots of those effects that can be doing that. And then also, if I happen to have my Crucible of Worlds in play, heck, I can start repeating the process, right? I can play my Ghost Town from my graveyard now, return it to my hand again, and keep doing this process over and over again. So you can actually get into some funny little situations there as well. So if you are playing a discard theme in the Commander format, and of course, there's lots of different variations of that. Maybe you just want to be filtering through your deck. Maybe you want to be putting stuff into your graveyard. So you're doing a lot of discarding. Discarding is a great way to fill your graveyard with stuff if you're in like a Reanimator theme. Maybe you're like me and you have that Browlin deck that's the purpose of the deck is to be discarding to get the trigger off your commander. There's lots of different reasons why you might be in a discard theme. And if you are, these are the things that you should be looking at that might not be as intuitive, right? There are certain cards that can be phenomenal in certain situations that, maybe I'm in the situation where it's not so good, so I'll just discard it. Obviously, there's lots of cards that want to be in your graveyard. Squee Goblin Nabob, again, is a phenomenal fit in any discard theme if you're in red. And also Crucible of World, land effects that might work good, might not be super intuitive, but I think could be a fantastic fit. So if you're in a discard theme, here's some great suggestions for you. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.